Experiment time. Today I'm going to be baking two different sourdough breads, one with a well-fed starter, the other one with one straight out of the fridge and not fed for 2 weeks. Will the dormant starter fail completely? Hi, I'm Sune and I'm a food geek. Today I'm going to test what differences there are when you use a well-fed and refreshed starter versus using a dormant starter that's been hiding in the fridge for weeks when you want to bake a sourdough bread. Conventional wisdom tells us to feed our starter 1, 2, even 3 times after taking it out of the fridge before using it for baking bread. But is that really necessary? That's what this experiment sets out to test. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you didn't have to feed your starter a bunch of times before you start to bake? Yeah, I thought so. If you're new to this channel, I bake a lot of sourdough bread and I make delicious food from all over the world. My goal is to show you how to get the most out of every ingredient, and I want to teach you how to do that in simple and understandable steps. So join me by subscribing and ringing the bell so you won't miss any future videos. The dough for each bread is exactly the same. About 78% bread flour, 22% freshly milled wheat flour, which I've milled on my muck mill. I've left a link in the description for the mill if you want to mill your own flour. The hydration is 80% and the inoculation about 22%. 2.3% salt. Hey, salt makes stuff tastier. Bread too. My theory is make something tasty and you'll be satisfied with a smaller portion. It works for me anyway. If you want to see the exact formula for both breads, it's linked in the description. If you're new to sourdough baking, go watch my video on beginner sourdough bread. You'll learn all the techniques. It's linked in the card above. Those were the words. This is the experiment. I start out by auto-leasing, including the salt. I build them in 2 different bowls so I won't have to split them up later when I mix in the starters. After about 1 hour of auto-leasing, I mix the doughs with each starter. First, the dormant starter. And then the well-fed starter. Then I let the dough rest for about 30 minutes to relax the gluten. Then it's time for the bulk fermentation. I will do 3 sets of stretch and folds spaced out by 30 minutes. The first set of stretch and folds. The second set of stretch and folds. And the third set of stretch and folds. Then I check the gluten development by doing a window pane test. Then I move the doughs to bulking containers and leave them to ferment undisturbed until they've risen about 50%. The well-fed starter dough is finished way before the dormant starter dough. It hadn't even started rising yet. Then I pre-shape the well-fed starter dough and leave it to rest for 20 minutes. Then I final shape the well-fed starter dough, put it in a banneton, and put it straight into the fridge for 8 hours. After about 3 hours, the dormant starter dough is ready to pre-shape, so I do that. And then I final shape it and put it in the fridge for 8 hours. When the well-fed starter dough hits the 7-hour mark, I turn on the oven to preheat. When the 8 hours are up, I grab the dough, I score it, and then I put it in the oven. After it's finished baking, I take it out to cool off. I turn off the oven again, since it's many hours until the other bread is finished its cold fermentation. After having preheated the oven, I grab the dormant starter bread from the fridge, I score it, and then I bake it. And this is how it looks out of the oven. Then I let both breads cool down to room temperature before cutting into them. Let's have a look at the crumb. First, the bread made with the well-fed starter. than the bread made with the dormant starter. And then for the sniff and taste test. Nom, nom, nom. Nom, nom, nom. Well, those both look great, didn't they? Okay, some key differences. Oven spring was a lot better in the one made with the well-fed starter. Fermentation for the dormant starter was significantly longer. The well-fed starter took 2 hours and 55 minutes from mixing to ready to pre-shape. The dormant starter took 6 hours and 30 minutes, which is more than twice as long from mixing to ready to pre-shape. Keep in mind that the well-fed starter had been fermenting on the kitchen counter prior to being mixed. The dormant starter came out of my very cold fridge, which is set to 2 degrees Celsius, about 35.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So that in itself will prolong fermentation. If you take it out of the fridge, maybe even measure out the exact amount you need and then let it come up to room temperature, you'd be able to shave off some of that extra time for fermentation. Another thing is that during the entire process, the dough made with the dormant starter smelled a lot more sour. That paired with the longer fermentation made the bread actually more tangy, thus more delicious. It could have been even paired with a lower percentage of inoculation, hence an even longer fermentation to make the bread even more sour. To see my experiment of baking with different starter inoculations, follow the card above. To enhance the sour flavor even further, you could use rye flour instead of whole grain wheat flour. So the conclusion is that it's absolutely viable to bake with the unfed starter straight out of the fridge. You can even use it to enhance the flavor of your sourdough bread. Surprising, huh? If you want to support the channel, please buy my merch or use the links in the description for tools and ingredients. Those are affiliate links, so if you buy something, I will get a commission. I hope you learned something today. See you next time.